Welcome to the Bema, Dr. Ken Schneck.
I'm going to push that in. Shabbat Shalom. In 1989, at 12 years old, I was suspended from Hebrew school. By the way, just so you understand my humor, there's a part of me that wants to just now leave and have that be the entirety of my remarks to you, but I will, just thought that'd be funny. I will start over. In 1989, at 12 years old, I was suspended from Hebrew school. Mr. Zaidel said that I was being disruptive to the Jewish learning. I couldn't tell you what passage we were studying, but I know that I just kept asking why. I was told that one more why would get me kicked out of Hebrew school. I heard that as an invitation, and my mother then heard the phone ring to come get me. She was mortified, I was bewildered, but the message to a 12-year-old me was clear: I was failing at Judaism. It was one in a long string of my failures in Judaism. I grew up in northern New Jersey, attending Temple Emmanuel in Woodcliff Lake under the watchful eye of Rabbi Andre Unger, a Hungarian-born, towering pillar of Judaism who was personally ejected from South Africa by the government for standing against apartheid. Rabbi Unger's poetic translations of the Amida appear in all editions and all versions of the Siddur Sim Shalom, the prayer book for conservative Judaism. Rabbi Unger was and is a big deal. My father, Barry Schneck, also a big deal. He had no translations of poems, and he's never been kicked out of anything in his entire life. But he was and is the guy in Temple Emmanuel every Saturday morning. He's that guy that quiets down all those 12 and 13-year-olds who can't possibly understand the hours of alien tongue through which they are apparently supposed to sit there silent and reverent. For the high holidays, for the past 42 years, my family has had our own reserved pew. Not in the upstairs service in the main sanctuary, but in the downstairs service that starts 45 minutes later. The second pew does not have any reserve signs on it, but if you are not a Schneck, you do not sit in that row. For my own bar mitzvah, I conducted 80% of the service myself, far more than my 3 older siblings. But even then, I knew that I was acutely disconnected from the words. Our prayer books at Temple Emmanuel did not have English translations, so I was learning what I felt was gibberish, essentially because I was my parents' last child to transition into adulthood, and I did what I wanted to do to make them proud. But I did not feel a connection to my faith during my bar mitzvah, and the message was again clear to me. And then there's the part where I was told all the time to marry a Jewish girl. I did not date in high school. I did not have the word gay in my vocabulary or my consciousness, but I knew that I would never marry a Jewish girl. Yet again, I felt a clear message, and the message was that I was failing at Judaism. When I got to New York City for college, I don't know if you guys know this, there's actually a lot of gay people in New York City. No idea. Now, my grades started suffering because I was having a hard time figuring out my sexual orientation, and I was lying to my family incessantly about my social life. As my grades started to flag, an academic advisor recommended that I go to a therapist there on campus. Counseling is not something that the Schnecks do, but I agreed to go see the therapist, the counselor at NYU. And she said to me, "What brings you here?" And I said, I think I'm gay. She said, "Well, what makes you think that you are gay?" And I said, "Well, I study queer theory. I love queer theory. I devour every book on queer theory." She said, "Yeah, that queer theory is great, but that doesn't mean that you're gay." I said, "Okay, but every time there's a gay character on TV, I just love it. I get so excited. I'm so excited to see gay people on TV." And she said, "Yes, gay people on TV is a great thing, but that doesn't make you gay." I said, "Okay, also, I'm having a lot of romantic liaisons with men." And she said, "Yeah, you're gay." And what she wanted me to do was to stop lying. She said what was really hurting, what was the barrier for me, was lying to my family so incessantly. So I decided that the next time that something came up, the opportunity for me to tell my parents, to tell my family that I was gay, I would take it. I was not anticipating that opportunity would come so soon. A few days later, after that counseling appointment, it was the high holidays. My two sisters, my brother, and I were all living in New York City. And so we took a car together back to New Jersey. It was about a 30-minute ride on the Garden State Parkway. And my oldest sister was driving, and she was dating someone very seriously. And we were pestering her, and we were saying, are you going to marry him? Are you going to marry him? And then I think I said, are you going to marry him? And she paused, and she said, well, if I tell you all, if I'm going to marry him, will you, Ken, tell us something? Right? So I knew which question was coming, but I wasn't worried because we were only 5 minutes from my parents' house. So there was only so long this conversation could go. I said, yes, absolutely, I'll answer your questions. We asked her, are you going to marry him? She said, yes. She turned to me, and which she was driving, which wasn't very safe. She turned to me and she said, are you gay? And as soon as I said yes, we hit one of the worst traffic jams in the history of the Garden State Parkway. 54 minutes to take a 5-minute drive. What quickly became clear to me is that my siblings were going to tell my parents. So I asked them to please hold off. Can we get through Yom Kippur and the atoning before you tell my parents that I'm gay? And so they agreed. And so then I did the courageous thing after Yom Kippur, and I told my mother on the phone. So I told my mother, and my mother was crestfallen. It was not something that she saw at all. And so her way of dealing with that was to issue me a series of challenges. She wanted me to tell various people in my life in the hopes that those people would talk me out of it. And the first person she wanted me to tell was the matriarch of my family, my 86-year-old grandmother. So I called my grandmother on the phone. I said, hi, Gran. I am the youngest of her 8 grandchildren. 8 grandchildren, 19 great-grandchildren. I said, Gran, I would talk to her every other day, and I said, Mom and I are fighting. Well, why? She said. I said, we're just not getting along about something. Well, what? She said. I said, she has expectations that I can't meet. Well, what are they? And I said, Gran, I have to tell you, I'm gay. And she said, gay. And I said, yes. And she said, what is that? And I said, it means that I love men. And she said in the most supportive, beautiful way possible, you're a fairy. And I then was in the position of saying, yes. And then she just kept saying it over and over and over again, but in the most beautiful, supportive way. And she said, you will always be my fairy. And I thanked her, but it was a rough phone call for me. So I called my mother back and I said, Mom, I told Gran, she was fine with it. I'm the best of all the fairies. And she said, well, then I want you to call and tell the rabbi. And this was Rabbi Unger. So I did not know how to get in touch with the rabbi. I was in New York City, and so I called the temple as if he lived there. And I said, I need to speak to Rabbi Unger. And they patched me through to Jerusalem. I don't know where he was, but they patched me through. And my whole thing was, given my father's place in this temple, I did not want to out my parents as being the parents of a gay son without them coming to that realization and owning that themselves. So I said to the rabbi, Rabbi, I can't tell you who I am, but I have to be honest with you. I'm having this experience with my family, and my parents had decided that they were not, at that time, they weren't going to pay for New York University because they felt that New York University had in some way made me gay. Did a little, but... So I said, I can't tell you who I am, but this is the experience I'm having with my parents. And he said, I know my congregation, and I know that no 2 parents in my congregation are as lacking in understanding and acceptance as you are making your parents out to be. And I said, no, you don't understand. They hang up on me, like it's not going well. And he said, I know my congregation, and I know that no 2 parents are as lacking in acceptance and understanding as you are making your parents out to be. And I said something else of, no, it's really not going well. And he started his diatribe again. And I said, well, my parents are Barry and Terry Schneck. And he said, yes, that's not good at all. And so we had a great conversation about it. I'm sweating now thinking about talking to Rabbi Unger on the phone. But he said that he preaches love and he preaches acceptance, and given what he has seen in South Africa and given what he saw in Hungary, and given that Temple Emmanuel, the centerpiece of Temple Emmanuel, is a Torah that is rescued from the Holocaust, there is no way that he will stand by as two parents are not embracing their son wholly. So I called my mother back and said, I told the rabbi, who's next? Who do you got? She had a list, and I just systematically went through the list and told a lot of people. Over the years, we've come to a beautiful place. My mother is my biggest champion, without question. And when Rabbi Unger retired, and the interim rabbi made anti-gay marriage remarks in 2009, my father stood up in the middle of the rabbi's sermon, and he walked out. For Barry Schneck to take an action like that sent shockwaves through the congregation. That interim rabbi had to call my father on the phone. He defended his anti-gay stance, and he asked my father to return to the temple. I actually called my father this morning and asked him why he went back. I actually had this false narrative in my head that the rabbi had apologized, and when I said that to my father this morning, my father, who will retain that knowledge from 10 years ago, said, no, he did not apologize. So I said, well, why did you go back to the temple? And my father told me this morning that he was a man of forgiveness, and also that someone needed to quiet down those 12 and 13-year-olds. And yet still, even with supportive parents, I continued and continue to struggle with Judaism. I see the comfort it brings to my family. I see the unthinking solace it brings to them, the anchor in the storm. Any storm that they encounter, Judaism helps them navigate through that, and I fervently want that. And so you all are actually catching me at the start of a new journey, a travelogue much like my first book of adventures, but this time it's a series of adventures connected to a faith that I know but don't always feel. A few months back, I had the first of those adventures. It's what I'm affectionately calling Week O Rabbis, where I spent time with 7 rabbis in 5 days. From the most liberal hippie rabbi to a Chabad rabbi, I barely made it out of there, to an extraordinarily orthodox rabbi. The 7th and the final rabbi with whom I spent time was Rabbi Unger. He is 91 years old. His body has completely betrayed him, but his mind works in ways that are outrageously aspirational for me. We talked about my parents, we talked about his life, we talked about New Jersey, and then he said, when are we going to talk about what brought you here? I asked him what he meant, and he responded, being gay and being Jewish. Had I not come to his apartment soaking wet from a thunderstorm, I assure you that I immediately would have been soaking wet from sweating through my anxiety when he brought that up. What followed was an incredible conversation during which, at some point, I said the words I've said to you a few times, I feel like I'm continually failing at Judaism. Rabbi Unger, a few months back, had neither the time nor the temperament to validate what I had said. Rubbish, he yelled at me, in the quietest voice possible. He explained to me that there is nothing more Jewish than authenticity. He explained that truth is a Jew's greatest weapon, that being who it is that we are and expressing that lies at the heart of all Jews. Living our genuine lives has lifted up Jews and Judaism to our most soaring triumphs, and being authentic has carried us through our most devastating struggles. And he concluded by saying words that I will never forget, Ken, you are far more Jewish than you think. Got me thinking. When I was suspended from Hebrew school for asking why, I wasn't failing at Judaism. I was being the most Jewish a person could be by asking why. When I performed that bar mitzvah solely to cause pride in my parents' eyes, I wasn't failing at Judaism. In honoring my parents, I was being the most Jewish a person could be. And when I came out of the closet, when I accepted my sexual orientation, when I champion the underdog, and when I tell you all brazenly, unabashedly, and proudly that I am a gay man, I'm not failing at Judaism. I'm being the most Jewish a person can be. I have a lot more searching to do, but even that searching is super Jewish. I call my mother before I do anything, really, every day. My mother and I talk almost every day. And certainly when I'm going to speak somewhere, I call my mother and ask for any advice. And she said, well, what is it tonight? We talked on the way over to the east side. I live on the west side. She said, where are you going tonight? Is it a burlesque thing? I host burlesque shows in Cleveland, and my mother always assumes that I'm hosting a burlesque show, even when I'm going to teach a class. And I said, no, I'm actually going to a temple. And she said, of what faith? And I said, of Judaism, Mom. And she got very emotional. And she had 3 things. She said, well, you will tell them 3 things from me. And she always does this. And so I will relay to you what my mother has shared with me on the drive over. First, my mother says, Shabbat Shalom. So Shabbat Shalom. Second, she said, this is 100% true, she's very sorry about the demise of the Cavaliers. She's very upset about that. And third, she said, again, it's a Jewish temple you're going to? I said, yes. She said, well, then you have to make sure to tell them, if it's a Jewish temple, that you're a single gay Jew with a PhD and a professor. And I said, Mom, I'm not going to be so tacky as to tell this congregation that I'm a single gay Jew and a professor. And with that, I say Shabbat Shalom, and please live your authentic lives. Thank you.